Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar about building your rep network. I'm Anna from the TUC, and I'm joined today by Jenni Gunn from PCS and Sarah Hayes from UNISON, and I'll be handing over to them shortly. But just a little bit of housekeeping before we get going. We do have live captions on today's webinar, so if you want to view the webinar with the captions, click the green button that's at the bottom of the screen that says Open Live Transcript, and you'll be able to view those. It's great to see so many of you already using the chat panel that's on the right hand side of the page. Please use that to introduce yourselves and exchange ideas and tips with each other. And my colleague Ian will be posting any links to resources in there throughout the webinar. But don't worry if you miss any, because we are recording this and we'll send a link to the recording round to everyone, along with any resources. If you've got a question for Sarah or for Jenni, please post it in the Ask a Question button, which is right at the bottom of the screen underneath the video feed. Right, without further ado, we're going to get on to the substance of today, which, as I said, is about building your rep network. So we all know how important union reps are in the workplace, but we know that it's good to have a good rep network so that you can share the workload and so that people can retire. What we'll be thinking about today is how you identify union members who would make good reps, and how do you create the right conditions to help members step forward to take on that role. So we're going to hand over first to Jenni to take us through some of the programs that PCS have for this. So Jenni, over to you.
Thanks very much, Anna. Hi everybody, it's great to be here today. Thanks very much to the TUC for inviting me along to have a chat with you all. As Anna said, my name's Jenni. I work for PCS based in Glasgow, and really happy to see so many folk tuning in today to talk about how we build our rep networks and our activist networks, which is what I'm going to talk a little bit about today, because I do think there's a little bit of a difference. So I've been asked to talk a little bit about how we identify new reps, and I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the work that we've been doing in PCS to build those activist networks. And specifically, I'm going to talk about a role that PCS has been developing for the past few years, that of the workplace advocate, and how that's helped us to increase our organising capacity and our ability to build union power in the workplace to win for workers. So in PCS, and I'm sure that this will be familiar to reps of any union on the call today, we identified that our workplace reps carrying out the traditional roles and responsibilities of negotiating with management and representing members, but under immense pressure, essentially. And we've noticed during the pandemic, and many of you on the call will know that during the coronavirus pandemic, that pressure is only increased. The work that you're doing in the workplace is so key to keeping your members safe and keeping the general public safe as well. So any rep on the call will know that the job you do is so important, but it's also one of the most difficult jobs that there is. And our reps do an amazing job of representing members and negotiating with management and managing the day-to-day running of their branches. However, many of our reps were reporting back to us that because of the specific work that they do within branches, they weren't always able to dedicate as much time as they would like to building member engagement and focusing on the time-consuming tasks of driving forward the organising agenda within PCS. So PCS decided to create a supplementary role to that of a workplace rep that we call a PCS advocate, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that today. So first, what is an advocate? It's a fairly simple answer, actually. An advocate's a member who wants to do a little bit more than just pay their union dues every month. They're a network of trained and supported and enthusiastic members who want to help build the union in their workplaces by doing small incremental tasks that A, take pressure off their reps, but B, also increase union visibility and engagement in the workplace. It's a less formal role than that of a traditional rep, so advocates don't take on personal cases, they don't negotiate directly with management. However, the work that they do is no less important in ensuring that we have a healthy and vibrant union culture in the workplace. During the pandemic, PCS has recruited and trained online literally hundreds and hundreds of new workplace advocates that are getting involved in their branches in loads and loads of different ways. And we found that by bringing on lots of new advocates to do small things to help out, we've seen a real increase in the amount of engagement with the union. I call these small tasks that advocates do the bricks that build the barricades, as it were. You know, there's small things that people can get involved in their branch, but they go a long way in helping to build the union in the workplace. So the one thing I really want to stress here is that if we're going to get serious about building effective workplace structures, we need to realise that not every potential activist will be willing or able to take on the role of a traditional rep right on at the get-go. And that's all right, that's okay. So we're looking to build a union culture where everyone's contribution, no matter how big or how small, is welcomed. And it's our job as reps and organisers to try and create opportunities for our members to get involved in collective union activity. Many of the advocates that come on to do the role in PCS are quite happy just dedicating a little bit of time each week to promoting the union or help the branch carry out small tasks. However, what we have found is that many advocates use the role as a stepping stone to build their knowledge and confidence, and a load of those members that have come on as advocates have then gone on in the future to stand for election, for branch positions, or gotten involved in union learning and loads of other ways. So it's been really useful for us for identifying and engaging future reps in a sort of different way. It allows them to sort of dip their toe into trade union activism before they're ready to take on a more formal role. Because it's a more flexible role and it takes into account the specific skills and abilities that that person has to offer, it's actually really helped us to diversify our activist base as well. We all know that all unions have got a long way to go in terms of making sure that our branches and our democratic structures reflect our rank and file membership. And one of the things that we have noticed in terms of people coming forward as advocates is that the majority of them are A, women, and B, young members. And that's meant that the role has really helped us encourage people from underrepresented groups to come forward and get more involved in their union. So now we know what an advocate is. How do we identify them? How do we identify potential advocates and reps? There's a whole load of ways to do this, but I'd like to focus on a few that we've used in PCS that I think you'll find particularly useful. One thing to note here is that any advocates that come forward in PCS are already doing the role in their workplace in a really informal and organic way. Every branch has these members that are always willing to help hand out leaflets during a ballot, or bring a couple of colleagues along to a union meeting. And our job is to make sure that we are A, identifying those members, but also engaging them and allowing them to support their skills that they're already using for the benefit of the union. So this might seem like a really obvious point, but I think it's worth repeating that the number one thing that we can do to identify potential activists is to create opportunities for people to do small things for the union. For example, can we get them to share a petition, or can we ask them to write a small piece for the local union newsletter? If we do that and create those opportunities, we can build up a better picture of which members are willing to help out and what they're willing to do. And it also gives them a sense of ownership over union activity in the workplace, which is really key for building the member engagement that we need to win for workers. As well as creating the opportunities, we also have to actively ask people to get involved and be direct. We should never be afraid to ask members to build their own union. And try as far as possible to try and tailor your specific ask to that individual. So, for example, if you've got a member that has a particular interest in equalities, why not ask them to help run a Black History Month event or help publicise a Women's Network event? If they're particularly young and tech savvy, maybe they could help run the branch Facebook page, or if they're an excellent recruiter, get them involved in doing inductions, things like that. Another great way of helping us identify potential activists is making sure that branches have a good, robust workplace map in place. I think this is absolutely key. It's an indispensable tool for helping us assess areas of strength and weakness within our workplace structure. But if we're systematically mapping which staff members are regularly taking part in union activity, we can better identify those highly engaged members that would make good potential activists. So how do you pop the question? So you've got them involved in a few different union activities, but you want to ask them to come on board formally. And I've got a few tips and tricks here as well. So one of the most important things to keep in mind here is finding out what the specific issues are for that person. And it should always be a two-way conversation. And for this reason, my number one tip of how to approach a potential activist is don't do it by email if you can possibly help it. I know during the pandemic that emails become the primary method of communication. We're particularly bad for this in PCS because of the nature of the work that our members do. They're tied to a computer for a lot of the day, and I have to stop myself from doing it sometimes. But if you can, invite the member to take part in a quick Zoom meeting or a chat over the phone, or if you're still in a workplace, try have a socially distanced coffee and ask them to dedicate some time to getting involved in their union. If we're asking people to give up time and energy to build the union, we should be able to do it face to face so that we can encourage them to come forward, but also hear about their concerns and maybe some of their frustrations, which they're bound to have. One of the most frustrating aspects of organising during the pandemic has been that I sorely miss that natural face-to-face interaction between members, and we've had to adapt to this new ways of working, and I completely understand that, but I'm still firmly of the opinion that nothing can ever replace a one-to-one, two-way conversation. So if you can stick to that, do stick to that. Another good tip, and this again might seem quite obvious, but I also think it bears repeating, is that it's always really important to project energy and excitement and confidence when you're talking about people getting involved in their union. Sometimes I think it's really easy for us to focus on how terrible the workplace could be and how much we have to do and get really, really angry about all the bad things that we're trying to change in the workplace. I very often find myself getting more angry than the member I'm speaking to is about a particular issue. It's important to remember that the anger is there before we are. So it's our job to channel that anger by projecting positivity about the union as the vehicle for change in the workplace. So I could talk about this all day, and I've probably already gone over my 10 minutes, so I'll wrap up here. But the last thing I wanted to say is don't be afraid to ask somebody to get involved. Sometimes you might bring someone on board and it doesn't work out, or someone you thought would be super keen turns out to not be interested, and that's okay. We're not going to get it right every single time, but the more we get used to asking rank and file members to build their own union, the more that our members will see the union as a positive force for change in the workplace and not just a fee for the service. And if we do that and we get into the way of doing that all the time, I think we'll build unbeatable unions that will continue to win for workers. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much there, Jenny. I think you gave us some fantastic ways to get started with this, and some really good hints and tips, your top tips about how to engage with members. And I think a key thing to take away is perhaps start small, get them to hand out a leaflet or something and build from that. And then that's perhaps a really good way to go. So we'll put some of your questions to Jenny shortly, but before that, I'm going to hand over to Sarah Hayes from UNISON, and Sarah's going to talk to us about a fantastic scheme that they have in UNISON about mentoring and support. We also, it's great to see in the chat so many people telling us about schemes that are in other unions as well. I'm sure lots and lots of different unions have different ways of doing very similar things, so it's great to hear about them. Anyway, over to you, Sarah.
Thanks, Anna. So as Anna said, I'm Sarah Hayes, and I work in UNISON's Learning and Organising Services, which looks at the training for our reps, for our stewards, for our union learning reps, for our quality reps, our health and safety reps. But we also look at all the other branch officers and contacts that we have, as well as our member learning scheme. In terms of kind of mentoring and supporting reps, I think that the same goes for anyone. If you're a steward, a potential rep, potential activist, or potential contact. And the key here for us and for UNISON has been that knowing that if I take a step forward and get more involved, I know that there will be training, and I know that there will be support for me at every step I take. And that is the kind of the crux that we've kind of worked on, ensuring that there is training and support and a contact there for anyone who wants to take that step forward and get more involved. What does that look like? Well, for us, it's about having a contact right from the start, and having a right contact that you can engage with that person, and whether that be a member of from our Unison branches, or whether it be a member of kind of Unison staff from our regions, but having a contact and having someone where you can go and being absolutely clear is key. The second thing is being clear of what you're kind of saying that you want to get involved on, being clear of the role. What is that role? What does it mean? And what are the possible first tasks, and what it could look like, and how I can get involved? And then the third thing is where to go for further information, and where to go for further support. So who, the where, and the how. And for us, it's about gaining experience and confidence with that support at every step of the way. And so before even having any kind of training, or firstly before saying, yeah, I think I want to get a bit more involved, it's finding out about how to access that training and where that support's going to come from. And then kind of during that training and during those original first steps, it's having that support and having that contact throughout, and then into any further training as well. And then after kind of when you have that kind of accreditation, if you're a rep, or whether you've got that kind of that certificate to say that you're, effectively involved in the union, well, being clear of what the next steps are, what your parameters are, and where you can continually go for that support and further training. So it is a continual process. So it brings me down to kind of who and who would be doing that mentoring. Well, as Anna said, we do have a clear scheme called Trained and Active, and I'll go through that to start with, but it's always been on the premise of we want something that's realistic and it's appropriate support, and that could be from our branches, and it's also from our regional union structures as well. So the structure is not necessarily prescriptive, it's what works for that particular rep, for that particular branch and local structure, because obviously within Unison we have members across the public, the private and the community sectors, and so having been prescriptive of a mentoring scheme for us, it is not necessarily kind of going to be successful, but it's about ensuring that there is that clear contact, there is that kind of clarity of role, and knowing where to go for the support, going where for the support is absolutely key. And so it is a mix of kind of everyone working together to support and kind of ensuring that our reps get that experience and get that support there. And so we have a scheme, and we have different formats of it. We have a formal mentoring scheme where you have, and these are for our more senior reps, where there's an agreed period of time, there's agreed meetings and agreed kind of tasks and steps with an absolute agreed purpose. But we also have something that's a bit more informal, and for branches can say, well, yeah, we will support this rep until the time where they feel that they have enough experience and enough confidence to fly. And then we also have a buddying scheme, which is really just being there at the end of the phone, at the end of an email, at the end of a text or a Zoom call. And that's something that's worked for us on our current health and safety campaign, Be on the Safe Side, during this kind of current pandemic, where we're recruiting and training many, many more health and safety reps, as I'm sure you can imagine. And so kind of that being that contact is absolutely key as well. And how is it going to work? How formal or how informal? Which brings us to our kind of trained and active approach. And this is something that we have got, and it's 3 steps, and it can be for someone who's a contact. So we heard from Jenny just now in terms of the PCS advocate. So in Unison we would call them a contact, and that is someone who wanting to get the first steps of getting involved, needing to find out about how Unison works and how they can actually kind of get involved and ensure that the union is visible in the workplace. They're at how to talk to other members and potential members. We've got a scheme as well for our activists, and when we talk about activists, I'm talking about our not just our ULRs, not just our health and safety reps, but also the many branch officer roles we have as well. So in terms of for quality, in terms of communication, and also for education. And then our more formal rep structure, which we've also split into 2 stages now. So there's a stage 1 kind of stewards training, which is more of the organising approach, and takes out some of the nitty-gritty kind of negotiation and representation elements. And then the stage 2 includes the more of the representation and negotiation, to enable someone to go through that training, gain a bit of experience of kind of talking union, and then moving on to getting involved into the representation side of things. And so this guide, and I think a link has just been put in the chat, is a plan, and it's not a prescriptive plan, but it's a really useful working document that the mentor and the kind of the new rep or contact or activist can go through and look at kind of what are the tasks, what are the activities that I can get involved in and I can be doing, and it maps out kind of the next steps for you to do. And you can also kind of tick off to say, well, yeah, this is something that I can do, this is something that I feel confident in doing, and I'm now experienced in doing this. And it kind of moves you through a process, but it's very, very clear that this is kind of something that's not prescriptive, but it's an absolute tool. And we've found that branches across the union have found that our trained and active process is something that works, that starts from as soon as someone wants to get involved, right through to that having experience. And some of our branches use it as a kind of a developmental process, as an annual PDR, if you like, and checking in and ensuring what training and what support can the branches and the reps have together kind of throughout the next year. And it's during this kind of COVID pandemic, it's been something that we've been able to go back to and say, right, these are the other bits of real key training that we need to ensure that we get on. And as a tool, it's a perfect thing where you can then keep in contact with the reps. So it's not the rep waiting for the new rep to kind of contact you. You've got an excuse to say, right, let's have a catch up. Let's have a catch up, whether it be, hopefully by face to face, but if not, via all the other methods of communication. And that continual contact, that continued opportunity, and that assurance that whenever I take the next step, I know that there'll be support for me, and I know that there'll be training for me, is kind of what is important as part of our trained and active scheme. So I think that's about it for me.
Thanks, Sarah. I think we'll all agree that was really helpful to hear about what UNISON have been doing to mentor and support reps. We've had quite a few questions come in already, so I'm going to put some of those to Jenny and to Sarah in a second. Just first of all, we've had an open question, which I'm going to put to everyone, although I think you'll have to post your answers in the chat, I'm afraid. So Mick has asked, have any other unions developed a coaching program for reps? And if so, how successful has it been? So we have had a couple of mentions in the chat about similar schemes. They might be called something different, but they kind of do have a similar end. So feel free to share ideas and success stories or ways to improve in the chat. It's always helpful, I think, to learn from things that maybe perhaps didn't go quite right. Okay, so first question I'm gonna put to Jenny first, and then we'll go back to Sarah. So the question comes from Ian, and Ian asks, during the current pandemic, when we have very limited access to our members and we're not able to visit workplaces, how do we organise and recruit new stewards? Ian's finding it very difficult to maintain what we already have, let alone recruit any new ones. Any suggestions would be appreciated. Now, Jenny, you mentioned that you would always advocate a face-to-face conversation, but we can't go into workplaces so much. So what are your suggestions?
It's a great question, and I think that all unions are struggling with it just now. PCS is no different. We've had to adapt to these new ways of working as well, and there's a few different ways we've tried to do it. We're quite lucky in terms of most of our members are working from a computer every day. Of course, government departments then went and banned Zoom on all their computers, which made it more difficult for us because we were doing lots of things by Zoom. But one of the things that we have found is that because people are able to join work meetings or union meetings from the comfort of their own home, a lot of the time they're willing to go to meetings at lunchtime or after work that they maybe wouldn't traditionally do if they had to like hang about at 5:30 after work to go to a union meeting in an office or something like that. So I would say try as much as possible to use the technology that we've got. Things like Zoom are a really good resource. And we've been doing lots of Facebook Live events with the General Secretary where he asks questions live, but branches can do that, and some branches have started to do that with their members as well, using that sort of technology. Face-to-face conversations are the most important, but I totally get we're not in places and things like that. What I mean by face-to-face is more one-to-one, right? So it's better to pick up the phone to somebody and just say, give me your number, I'll phone you, it'll take 10 minutes. Or here's a Zoom link, have a coffee, 10 a.m, we'll meet and have a chat about how you can get more involved. I don't think there's any easy answer to this during the pandemic. We're just going to have to try things and see what works and see what doesn't. Some things will be really successful, some things won't. So the only thing I would say is just be creative, try something. It might not work, but you'll never know until you try.
Yeah, thanks, Jenny. I think that's a good point, be creative. But Sarah, perhaps in Unison, where not so many of your members spend their working days sitting in front of a computer, what would your tips be for this same question?
Thank you. So it's about, I think for us, it's about kind of trying to get regular contact, and that regular contact can be in many ways. And for our members that are in front of kind of computer screens, then many kind of video conferencing type things have been blocked, to be quite honest. So it's about finding creative ways of getting around that, and so but also at different times. And so just being available and regular contact is the key thing. And then organising a quick chat and getting someone else to come along too, and having those chats outside working hours, inside working hours, kind of evenings, and looking at all the different formats, being creative, but having as many options available as possible, really.
Yeah, thanks for that, Sarah. I think it's always important not to have just one way of contact or one option, because then you give people more opportunities. Okay, so my next question is about the age of our reps, because we want to attract people of all ages. So first of all, what do you think drives young members to become reps? And do you have any ideas about getting young people to be more involved in the union? One viewer has commented that in their union, most of the branch officials are over 50, and they suspect that maybe younger people might be worried about career progression. So kind of, lots of questions there, lots of thoughts about young people and encouraging more young people to get involved. So Jenny, you first, please.
I got involved as a young member, so it does happen. I was 22 when I became a union rep, so I was actually very young. I think that's a good point you make, Anna, about people being reticent about putting their head above the parapet, particularly when they're young. They're worried that if they get involved in the union, they'll be looked over for promotion and things like that. I think one of the things to point out to people is that being a union rep or an activist actually gives you incredible transferable skills that employers look for, right? That you have to be able to negotiate, you have to be able to deal with difficult situations. You're dealing with people that when they're at their lowest point and having to help them out. You're having to take on loads of information and dissect it and understand it. So being a union rep or a union activist actually does give you these brilliant skills that will go on to help you in your career. If you're in the civil service and you're not a member of the union, you're in the minority. So, most of your colleagues and your managers are in the union. So it's not a barrier to career progression at all. Learning and workplace learning is something that unions offer that give you better skills as well, and being more active in your union gives you greater access to that. I think the main reason and that young people get involved in unions, though, is because of organising, and I mean that with like a big O, right? So that unions are not a fee for a service, they're not there for when you get in trouble, and it's about saying to young members that the union can speak directly to issues that you care about, like climate change and racial justice and fairness in the workplace and equality. We know these are things that in wider society that young people are leading from the front on. The fight for climate justice is being led by young people, and unions have a role to play in that. So I think we have to have a bit of a better way of selling how the union is involved in these extra workplace things outside the workplace that young people could get involved in, and publicise that to them and let them know that, we are at the forefront of those struggles too, and they can be part of that.
Thanks, Jenny. So making it relevant to issues that they're into, really. What about you, Sarah, and attracting young people to be reps for Unison?
So I think in addition to making things relevant, the importance is listening to them, hearing what their ideas are, and their ideas are equally valid. And it's not about, oh, we've tried that once, so it's not going to work. It's actually, let's try it and change, and actually showing them that change is possible. And if they get involved, then we can make that, we can make that change and we can make that difference. It's not about necessarily, bringing them to a kind of a, to a meeting them and bringing them into the union structure initially. It's showing them how, if they get involved, then that change can happen. And the structure is there to ensure that they can, that they can make that change. I've seen so many times where kind of someone gets involved in kind of, the structures of things, and then things get lost. But it's about, ensuring that their ideas are valid, that we are listening, we are actually hearing, and we support them in trying out how they want to make that change.
That's great, Sarah. Thank you. So we've just heard from you both about young people, but we know that diversity covers lots of other areas as well. And even though this is a 3-woman webinar, we know that lots of unions, branches and reps are very often, they can have a lot of men involved. And traditionally, people might see it as a space that's traditionally male, or white or older. So we've had quite a few questions about making a more diverse rep space, not just about age. So have you got any experience or anything to offer people who might be wanting to do this? So Jenny, making your rep space more diverse with regards to gender or ethnicity, please.
Part of the reason why I decided to talk about advocates particularly today is that PCS has the same problem as every union does, that our rep base tends to be older, whiter and more male. And they're amazing reps. I'm not slagging them off. They do an incredible job, but it's not reflective of what our membership is, and about 65% of our members are women. And we really have struggled to recruit women into that role. And I don't want to generalise about women, because obviously this isn't every woman's experience, but we tend to find that a lot of women are reticent about coming forward as reps because they realise it's a big time commitment, and they are more likely to have caring responsibilities. They're less likely to attend meetings outside of work hours because they are caring for either relatives or children. And so the advocate's role has been really key in helping them dip their toe into that water of activism and saying, you can do as much or as little as you feel able to, and we can tailor whatever you want to do to your own interest and experience. So I think it's about creating different pathways into activism for different people that have different priorities about what they want to campaign on in the workplace, and not making it too prescriptive. So the traditional thing is to go to somebody and say, look, we're drowning in personal cases, we really need you to come on and do some personal cases. What about saying, we're really struggling to bring women on board, would you be willing to get some of your women colleagues together to talk about how we remove some of those barriers? That's union activism in itself, feed into the branch about how we can make it more inclusive. So I think it's just about being not so prescriptive and trying to find different pathways into activism.
Yeah, thanks, Jenny. That's really helpful. Sarah, we know that Unison is a union with a majority of female members. So how does your rep space reflect that, and some maybe tips that you've got to encourage more women and other groups to become reps?
I think we're continually working really hard to ensure that our rep space does reflect our membership. And one of the ways of doing that is going out and actually speaking to our members and explaining what the role of a rep is. And it is about representing the members in your workplace. It's not the spokesperson, someone coming in as an external force being the spokesperson for your and talking on behalf of you. It's about you knowing what the issues are in your workplace, knowing how it makes you feel and how it makes your colleagues feel, and what that actually means for you. And so you are the right person to be able to do that, and we can give you the support, we can help with the knowledge and the training and doing that. But ultimately, you're the one that can kind of affect that, you know, can affect that change. And that's so more effective than some kind of external person kind of coming in. And it's just so more, it's so more authentic as well, isn't it? And so kind of using that approach, not for all the kind of the various workplaces that we do have, seems to be kind of the best model. And then opening up our structures, and ensuring that we have kind of the proportionality in our structures and the fair representation kind of rules in our structures, to ensure that the kind of the rep spaces that we have do reflect our membership.
Thanks, Sarah. We've got a couple of very practical type questions in a second, but I just want to highlight a comment in the chat about it's using a gym metaphor. It might disappear in a second, so I'm just going to read it out in case it does. So people know that they pay a membership fee for a gym, and the gym provides the infrastructure, the equipment, the advice, the personal trainers, etc., etc. But that's not going to work if you don't go to the gym and put the time in. So you get fit by going to the gym and going on the treadmill, and you can get work fit by being involved in a union. I kind of like that. So yes, that's a great metaphor, I think. So a couple of really practical questions that have been posted. So the first one: how often do you think new reps should be contacted? I think that's a really good question, because while we want to provide support and like the buddying system, the mentor system, we don't want to sort of overload them. They're probably going to have a lot on their plates as it is. So Jenny, how often would you recommend contacting new reps?
I think it's bespoke to the person, right? Some people will need a lot of support and will want to be there like once a day, like once a week, getting on the phone. But some people are better just going and getting on with it. One of the things that we've tried to do in PCS, particularly with the advocates and new reps, is create space for them to all meet together to share best practice and that kind of thing. So they're not always relying on maybe one mentor or one full-time officer that they're going to all the time. But we have things like coffee mornings where advocates can drop in and out and say, like, I'm having an absolute nightmare at work this week. Like, there's something kicking off about pay this week and I'm really stressed and I don't know how to get in touch. And other advocates and members can support them to help them get better at that work. So I think it's, again, buzzword for the day, creative. It's about doing it creatively. Like, some people will want one-on-one contact, some people more likely to like a space where they can sort of self-organize. So it's just about being sort of reactive to what people's needs are, rather than being too prescriptive about what is the hard and fast rule about contacting reps.
Yeah, absolutely, Jenny. I think all these tips are fantastic, but it's about picking the right ones that meet your audience, rather than it being like a rule book. Yeah. Sarah, any thoughts on that, about how often you would contact new reps?
Yeah, so again, it's not about being prescriptive. It's being clear of and having that conversation initially with that new rep or that new contact to find out about what they want to get out of it, what experience do they have, how they want to work, how much time have they actually got as well, and how they want to be contacted, and then agreeing that. So it's almost like a contract, kind of a mentoring contract almost, and agreeing that and sticking to it as well. So you're not chasing them continuously, but then equally they're not chasing you, continually either. But you've had a conversation, and then you agree the way forward together. And if I can add, it's also about being a mentoring process. There's kind of the objective way of I'm going to treat everyone the same and I'm going to make sure that everyone is the best organising rep forward. There also needs to be a bit of subjectivity into it as well. So finding what interests that person is and why they're getting involved and what they want to do. Do they want to really in their workplace, or do they really want to sort out the comms? Whatever it may be, finding that out. So having that subjective approach is really key too.
Thank you, Sarah. We've had a question about creating a workplace map, and someone has asked what the best way is to build a workplace map. We do have some TUC training on how you do this and what sort of things you should include in a map. So we'll post a link to that in the chat in a minute when we dig it out. but they've asked about whether you should include non-members on such a map. I think absolutely yes. You need to know where you've got your members, where you have them, where your potential activists are, your potential future reps are. And I think it's important to emphasise as well that a map's not like a one-time snapshot. It's a kind of it's an evolving document, isn't it? It's going to change quite regularly. We will post a link, as I said, but also Jenny and Sarah, have you got any thoughts about mapping? I mean, I know we tend to think about it would happen in the workplace by the reps that are there, but have you got any ideas about how to create a more useful workplace map?
Yeah, if I can start this time.
Yeah, you go first, Sarah, of course.
So yeah, I think there's very, very different levels of mapping. So you've got that kind of basic level of kind of who's a member, who's not a member. And I see in the chat that people will also have difficulty in trying to, even gain names and things. And we've got to be clear of kind of, GDPR kind of data protection issues here in terms of what you record. But there's also kind of the relational kind of mapping linked to relational organising as well. So, mapping kind of what conversations you've had and who knows who and how keen people are kind of getting involved and kind of what their interests are. Again, being careful what you record. But I think kind of having those different levels, but being clear of the purpose of the mapping. And as you said, Anna, it's not a one-time document. It's a continual thing that you add on, and you continue to add.
Yep, sure. Thank you, Sarah. Jenny, what are your thoughts about mapping?
I love mapping. I'm a bit of a map geek. I love a good workplace map. It just makes my heart sing when they're all nice coloured in. And yes, you should absolutely include your non-members in that. If you have union activity, like a survey or petition, and you're mapping staff that are engaging with that, and you're regularly finding that your non-members are maybe signing petitions and taking part in surveys, then that's a way that you can target them, because they are engaging at some level with a collective union activity, and it makes sense for them to join. What we've tended to do because of COVID, and we've done this sort of before COVID as well with our big national branches, some branches we have that are spread over a large geographical area where all your reps aren't in the same building, is we've created electronic maps that you can put on a Google document. So during a BEC by Zoom, sorry, a branch executive committee, I shouldn't talk in what's the word, acronyms, during a branch executive committee meeting, you can all have the Google Doc open and you can say, right, X person signed the petition today, and it updates in real time. So Google Docs has been a really good way of us being able to keep working collectively on our workplace map and make sure they're updated. PCS also has an organising app that branches can use around particular campaigns, which has a list of all your members, and we used it during our last National Industrial Action ballot. So when reps were going around the workplace asking members if they voted, they were able to click on the person's name and say, yes, this person has voted. That person was sent an email by PCS, thank you for voting, make sure you encourage your colleagues to vote as well. So that's been a really good piece of technology that we've been able to use to help us focus our organising in a workplace to make sure we're targeting our areas of weakness and maybe not spending all our time in our areas of strength, which is sometimes too easy to do.
Thanks, Jenny. And you mentioning Google Docs there leads us into the next sort of theme of questions. We've had a whole bunch of questions really about different communication methods and tools. So I'm going to try and group them together. So we've had people talk about email frequency, social media, or you mentioned, I think, just then an app, Jenny, as well. Sometimes, obviously, different unions are going to have different different methods at their disposal about what they can use and what works. But perhaps it would be helpful if you could each think about what your top 3 methods of communication are that might be successful with different groups. Because as we've said, it's not one size fits all. You've got to be kind of flexible and play to your audience. So Sarah, we'll start with you. Okay, so in terms of my kind of top 3, I think kind of a phone call, actually, getting a bit more old school, but a phone call so you can actually have that one-to-one conversation. And also a lot of our members
don't necessarily have access to any other digital format. So a kind of a straightforward phone call, which may well have text on it as well, is kind of the best way forward we found to reach everybody. I think trying to organise kind of a digital kind of meeting, kind of with whether it be a webinar or using many platforms, whether it's Zoom, GoTo, Teams. I know a number of our employers block some of them, and other people it's going to have an issue in terms of digital access. But trying to get people together from one of those different formats works really well. And then lastly, email, but email that isn't just a blanket email out to anyone, an email that's a meaningful conversation and starts as part of a meaningful conversation with someone, and that could be as a group, and so we can actually get a bit of collaboration going and a bit of group communication rather than kind of a whole blanket email. So that would be my top three.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. That kind of really relates to one of the questions we had about inclusion, especially if it's via email and you might be a few hundred miles away from the rep or the member you're communicating with. I think that's a really good tip to get started with that. So, Jenny, what would your top three tips/tools be for this?
I'll try and say ones that maybe Sarah didn't say. Yeah. One of the things that we've used very, very recently, actually, in our we have a campaign on the go at the moment about pay in the civil service, and one of the things that we've been trying to do is encourage members to sign a parliamentary petition to have a debate in Parliament about the pay campaign. Now, traditionally, if we were in a workplace, we just go around all of our members and say, "Have you signed the petition? Have you signed the petition?" We can't do that at the moment because most people are working from home. So we've been using new technology called peer-to-peer texting and getting advocates and reps involved in that, where you can mass text members and have one-to-one conversations with them. So you text them, "Have you signed the petition?" "No, I've not." You can send them the link. If they come back and say, "Well, I'm quite happy with my pay," the member can then have a text conversation with that person to try and encourage them to get more involved and to sign the petition. So I think peer-to-peer texting has been a really good mobilisation tool that we've used during the pandemic to great effect. Social media as well. I think we can sometimes be too reliant on social media and think that substitutes for actual face-to-face organising. But I think during the pandemic, it has become one of the main ways where members are getting quick, up-to-date information about what's going on in their workplace now, and it's saving lives, essentially. So really upping our social media game, making sure there's a lot of different sort of content, that there's content in terms of videos that have subtitles on them for our colleagues that maybe have a disability and things like that. I think social media has become really key. And the last one is the good old phone call, as you said. I mean, nothing substitutes for just reaching out by phone, checking in to see if people are okay. That's another thing we did right at the beginning of the pandemic, is we had a mass campaign to phone all of our members, to phone every member of the union and just say, "Are you okay? Are you working from home? Do you need help? Do you know who your rep is?" And it made a huge difference in terms of just reaching out to our members and saying, "Remember, we're here and we haven't gone away, and if you need us, we're here for you."
Thanks, Jenny. Some really helpful tips there as well. We've had another question about communication. It's a little bit different though. And the viewer asks, they said they're interested in two-way communication, not just us communicating to members, but they've yet to find a good method to encourage a dialogue coming the other way, from members to reps, and more crucially, between members themselves. So I suspect this is something that since March, since coronavirus has been with us, we've all had to think about a little bit more about how we facilitate that. So Sarah, have you got any tips for this area of communication?
Yeah, for us, it's been trying to enable kind of space and trying to find safe spaces for members to actually kind of communicate with us, and as you say, with each other. And because they may well not even see, some of our carers don't even see another colleague kind of during their working day. So finding kind of safe ways that they can communicate is absolutely vital. We've tried things like setting up WhatsApp groups where, they at least messages can be encrypted. We've tried by kind of setting up kind of webinars that are open, that members can then kind of, members can then communicate that way. So it's not kind of broadcasting a topic, but it's a webinar that's been set up that members then kind of come through. It's just about, as you say, trying and finding different creative ways and ensuring that we're there. But I think that being visible is important as part of that. And so being visible, maintaining communication, and ensuring reps are kind of communicating with their colleagues that way, and opening up as many kind of doors, whether they're digital doors or kind of physical doors, to ensure that members know that we are there, and how to kind of access us is key.
Sure, visibility, I think, so that they know it's not, there is a face, there's a person at the end of the email or phone or whatever. So Jenny, have you got any thoughts on this communication the other way?
Yeah, a few of our branches have set up WhatsApp groups for members. Some people are a bit reticent about joining a WhatsApp group because they don't want to be inundated with messages. But if you have quite clear guidelines of like, please don't use this to spam it with lots of like petitions about the Great British Bake Off or whatever. If you set clear guidelines, that's been a really good way of reps to keeping direct contact with their members and able to put things out quite quickly when they need to in the workplace, like there's going to be a shutdown in your work because there's been an outbreak, and you can put that out on WhatsApp. So that's been a really, really useful tool for some of our branches. PCS has also been developing our digital platforms that members can use. So a digital platform where they can sign in, update their own membership record if they've maybe moved house or if they've changed their workplaces. A lot of people in the civil service float between departments, so they can log in and do it that way. And part of that digital platform that we've worked on is a function called Chatter. So each branch has its own chatter page within PCS Digital where reps can post things and members can get involved in the discussion, sort of like an internal Facebook group, but only for PCS members. And that's actually been really popular so far. We're just piloting it with a few branches to begin with and then rolling it out to the rest of the union. But it's been a really good way for, as you say, the other way of communication, making sure our members are able to talk to the reps in the same ways that reps are able to talk to members.
Sure, thank you, Jenny. And I'm going to ask you one more question that kind of combines a few that we've had posted. It's about how we overcome the barriers of where we've not got a defined workplace to go and meet potential members or reps, and particularly if members or potential reps are out in the community, we don't meet them. There's a couple of questions been posted about this. One in particular in relation to the creative industries, but I guess it can apply to any workplace really or any membership that's not based in one kind of fixed place. So Sarah, you mentioned earlier with your members who are carers, this is sometimes an issue. So have you got any advice for us on this, please?
Yeah, so in our kind of community sector, where we, as I say, we do have work and have members who are carers, and they may well be carers that are going into, to people's houses, providing that 15 minutes of care, and then going straight on to the next one, and they don't even have a base to start off at. They'll get their schedule either by phone or and they get their schedule individually, so they might not even know who their other colleagues are, and so let alone actually have a workplace where that's fixed or seeing anyone else. And so that has been a real struggle to try and maintain a community of members and trying to organise that kind of community of members. And so it's been really about going into the community themselves and finding those hubs, pre-COVID times, going into those communities and hubs, going to the kind of the church halls and the community centres where carers may well be meeting with their clients as well, and finding those kind of safe spaces where we can actually put up some training. And we did a project previously where we put on training for carers, but we also put on some training for and some support for their client at the same time, so the carer could come away, do some UNISON training in the knowledge that their client or service user is safe, and having some training at the same time. So trying to do that, I mean, it's really, really hard kind of during these COVID times of trying to gather people together. And so it is those phone calls, trying to find those other kind of digital platforms is a way of trying to get people together.
Thanks, Sarah. Jenny, is this something you would have to deal with in PCS to a greater or lesser extent?
Not to the same extent. Most of our members tend to be in a one workplace, but before I worked for PCS, I was a care worker and a lay member of UNISON, and I did that very job, supporting people with learning disabilities in the community. Hardly ever saw another colleague of mine, hardly knew who worked where I was maybe in the office once a month. And I think you nailed that, Sarah, that it is about using those community hubs and seeing where people do maybe take service users, because that's about the only time that they might actually see other colleagues and things like that. I've no idea how we do it during the pandemic, to be perfectly honest. I think that is, I'm completely stumped, and I've got so much respect for the carers that are out there trying to organise their colleagues during this time in a particularly difficult situation. I've been there myself. I did it when it wasn't a pandemic and it was hard enough. So I don't really know how to answer that one at all. But yeah, absolute respect to the people that they're trying their best to do it.
I think on that note, because we've answered quite a lot of questions, we'll finish for today. Thank you so much to both Sarah and to Jenny for joining us. I think we'll all agree it's been a really helpful and really informative webinar, and you, our viewers, have been fantastic as well. It's been great to see so many ideas exchanged in the chat panel. We will be sending a link to the recording later today, and a list of any resources that we've mentioned. So do keep a lookout for that. And yes, stay safe, everyone, and we'll see you again soon. So just for now, it's bye from us.